There was an idea popularized in the 90s that different people had different learning styles. So some people were really audible and learned from hearing things. Some people were really visual and learned from like looking at things, and some people were more kinetic and hands-on and learned from, just really being hands-on with things. And I think there was a fourth one, which I can't remember. But this idea has been pretty solidly debunked. What matters when you're learning something is not who you are, it's the thing you're trying to learn about. So if you're trying to learn directions, then a map is the best way. Being able to see a map. If you're trying to memorize like a number, like if you've ever tried to memorize your credit card number, saying it in your head, or better yet saying it out loud, is a better way to learn to memorize it. And sometimes people come up with like songs or mnemonics or just a good cadence to memorize things. So the thing that you're trying to learn depends, or the style of the thing that you are trying to learn depends more on the thing you're trying to learn than it does on any sort of like inherent learning style that you have. So today we're going to talk about how everyone is visual, especially with design, right? So we're going to keep things visual, and we're going to look at some paper wireframes where I draw some ideas out, and then we're going to start to bring those into some digital screens, specifically wireframes, which is not like where we figure out exactly how something looks. It's where we start to figure out where things go and just an overall idea and concept. So, but before we do all that, we're actually going to backtrack a little bit and look at some observations again. Last time we looked at observations of the existing app. This time we're going to look at observations of other apps in the space. So other kind of like esports or sports apps. Right now we are looking at a fantasy football league app, and just a couple observations here that I've done. Well, I pre-did all these, so it's great to see this level of detail. It feels kind of spreadsheety. It's good that you can click on players and see their stats, or at least typically you can in a fantasy league app. I like that it's really centered on this graph at the top, this win probability graphic. It gives you something to ground the task you're trying to do around, especially if you're not super experienced around this stuff. You have something to like look at and to gauge how you're doing, and to sort of every time you make a change, that gauge is going to jump in a direction, and it just shows the impact of the things that you're doing. I think this visual showing you who you're playing, where you have a cool logo and you have interesting names, I think that's super helpful and helps make it immersive and fun. Overall, it feels very clean. It feels very grid-like. This green color is very interesting. It feels kind of weird, but I like that because it makes it distinct and unique. So a lot of interesting and good things going on there. The other screens I grabbed, and I grabbed more than this, but we're just going to go over these three today. Typically, you could spend like days on this if you wanted to do it well, but this is a thing I'm doing on the side, so I spent about 30 minutes on it. I apologize, I have strep, which is also why I haven't uploaded in a few days. So thanks for your patience with my coughing and hoarse voice. Okay. Both of these concepts are apps that, and I think they're both like ideas for apps that help you manage soccer teams, and they have very different despite the fact that these are both visual, they do come at it from slightly different directions. So I do think they both feel immersive, make you feel a bit more like you're the coach. The concept on the left has very high levels of detail. This grid system is really nice. I like these icons in particular, and how they kind of grab your eye and pull you to this grid cell. But then it's not reliant on the icon to explain what the thing is. So contract, you might understand that the pencil is what indicates the contract. But if you've never used this app before, it's nice to have it there. It does feel like this app is a lot of information. There's like, what do I do on here? Like there feels entirely like the only actions I'm going to take is to open up other panels here, and maybe there's something to do in this top area. But even that feels like you're just collecting more information. I think this biography is actually a really cool touch, And I think this, let's see, just the overall design system, this color palette, I think actually with like the purple, but then also this like sunshiny color. And then you still have your really technicals like greens and yellow and yellows, these really bright colors. I think overall this is very strong, very tight design. On the right, we have a different type of immersion, and I actually feel like this design, I feel like it's a bit less tight, but I do feel like it's a bit more immersive because it feels. I don't know if it is more task oriented, but it feels more like I would be doing things on this slide. Like I've got these gauges that I might be measuring my decisions against, similar to that app we looked at where you had the win percentage gauge. I can see my upcoming matches here. I'm assuming I do some sort of formation management with my players, which is really cool. I particularly like this whole list of players at the bottom. I think this is a really cool element. It makes it feel to me like my team is the thing that I'm dealing with. The color palette feels pretty good. I think that's really it for this design. But one more thing I wanted to touch on is this comment I found on one of the VFL videos from the official channel. So something that we covered in our last video was how the VFL works currently. And basically how it works is we have 4 roles and we have 2 players for each role. And the player that gets the most points in that role will be the one who scores for that week. So only one of the players scores, and it's whoever scores the highest. However, when you play the game, there are 5 players in the game. Roles are not locked. Usually you have 1 player in each role and then a 5th player doubling up in a role. Usually, not always, but usually that's how it works. And so this person was basically like, I want to manage 5 players. I don't want it to be like 8 players in 4 roles. I just want to have my starting lineup of 5, because the big appeal to this person is feeling like a real coach or GM who has to create a team that would be feasible in real life with like a realistic budget. So I thought this comment really stood out to me as interesting with immersion in particular. So, some interesting ideas there. And again, if you want to see the observations we identified from the existing app, go check out that last video. Anyway, we're going to take the learnings from both of these and create some opportunities to look at. So we did observations and now it's opportunities. The first opportunity is immersion. Are there ways that we can make it feel like the user is a coach in the league, like that last thing we just looked at? How can we make this super visual while still having that high level of detail? Can I have team colors? I always think customization, like creating your own team, your team name, team colors, etc., makes it feel like, just like adds a level to immersion. To me, that's actually super motivating in something like this. It's not for everyone, not everybody cares, but to me, it's actually a super important feature that makes me want to play something. All right, opportunity 2. How can we make this team management feel super intuitive? Is there a way that we can have a central graphic like we had that win percentage graphic in that first app? Can this be drag and drop? Right now, it's all managed through hovering and clicking. Drag and drop would be oh so nice. Is there a way we can like make this screen more cohesive? So rather than kind of having to scroll up and down, can everything just be central on one screen? Can we get more player details and context? Again, appreciate your patience with the coughing. All right, and then opportunity 3, can we make this feel unique? Can we make this branding not feel specifically like Valorant? Can we build on that brand to make it feel like its own product? And Valorant also has these animated shorts that they do. And sometimes in the shorts, you'll have a player, or I'm sorry, not a player, but an agent, a character in the game on a computer. They're hacking something and you get like cool computer graphics, similar to how like if you ever watched a Bourne movie or any sort of spy movie, they'll have like these blue graphics on a screen, and when you click on an agent name, it like pops up and you hear like the blink sound. These heads up displays, these interfaces that never work in real life, but seem really cool when we see them in video games or TV shows or movies. Anyway, point is, can we make this app possibly feel like it's one of the screens that those characters in the shorts use? Like, can it be branded in such a way that it feels like you're in the game, basically? Okay, so those are our 3 opportunities. We're going to do 2 more things here. We're going to look at paper wireframes, and then we're going to start to look at digital wireframes. And this is a couple days worth of work for me, but I just want to get this video series moving along. It's kind of stalled out, and I don't want to do that. I want to get to show some really visual final screens. Okay, so there's 6 sketches I did. I was doing these live and holding them up, but that was super scuffed. Ended up being scuffed, and I didn't end up being able to keep it. But I took some pictures of these so we could look at them in more detail. I think there were a few more, but these were kind of the only ones worth looking at. So concept, or this idea 1, was that we have all the players across. Their heads are really like peeking out of the card with their information on it. And then we'd have a different view, a bit more of a horizontal view below that. And then we have our bench on the bottom left. The second idea is kind of like Mortal Kombat, where you have tag teams where you can switch players in and out. So on the top right, you'll have that little graphic where you can switch players in and out. Here we're kind of doing it where you have a card and then you have a profile, and you can click on the profile and it would swap places with the card and become full size, and you could see the details on that player. And this would be 4 across. I accidentally did it 5 across, but it'd be 4 across, so you'd have 2 per roll. And then what if it was just straight across, no complications, just made it simple? What if the cards were a bit more horizontal rather than vertical? What if the cards had this sort of ascending view where the MVP was the player in the middle? So, another detail on this is that we should just talk about this really quick. So actually, let's talk about this on the next screen. And then the last is the same ascending idea, but what if everything was a circle? How would that work? And then you hover over it to get info. Okay, so I took these ideas. The ones that I'm showing in the top left, the first 2 are the strongest. They're not necessarily the first 2 I drew, but they're the 2 strongest. So we're going to try and explore these the most. And from there, we're going to hop over into some visual wireframes. Now, wireframes can be a lot rougher than this. They can be a lot more detailed than this. We're sort of working at this, like, I don't know, low to medium fidelity where things, look somewhat balanced, but this is nowhere near the final design we would want. And so just a quick note on this. So in addition to putting 2 players per role, you get to indicate 1 player as an IGL. So in the game, that means in-game leader. For the app, for the fantasy league, basically that means that person doubles their points for the week. So whatever score they get, you double that. That goes towards your final score. So hopefully you put that on the player that scores the highest. You get the most points, but regardless, it's a nice little boost. So that can be any player here. It's just something you need to know. I think on this concept, I would rather call it the top frag. I think top frag is a better word, or maybe MVP. Maybe for this concept, it should be MVP. Both those words just seem to apply much better than IGL. IGLs are typically like get less kills on a team because they're very focused on like strategy and keeping the ideas in play and making sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Whereas a top frag or MVP is just their goal is to go out and kill people, basically. So I think that those terms would work a little bit better. Anyway, our first set of wireframes is this idea of, you have your player and then you have this sort of Mortal Kombat-y idea where you would click on it and you'd swap out this card with the player. We have some player details here. We have their photo. We have the role that they're filling on the top left, which is not the same as their actual role. Their role might be the same, but it might be a wild card as well. We've pulled in the team logo. We have their most recent win. We have how much they cost. Just so some of the details here that are in the existing app. And then on the top left, we have, like an abbreviation for the team and then the team name. And we have which week this is for. A couple variations on this. So just a more simplified view with cards stacked on top of each other, and then one where the card is behind and the back top right rather than the front bottom left. And the second set of screens that we have is, so this is the idea of, how can we make this so it's a 5-man roster rather than an 8-man roster into 4 roles. And so I kind of cheated it a way, and a way that I think works. I sat down and did the logic for it, and it worked for me. Whoever runs the VFL would need to look at this and figure that out for sure. But basically the way it would work is you take that top frag player and you would give them their own role, and anybody could fill that role. But then you'd have basically your 5 players, and then these 3 subs would sub for any other role. So this person subbing for duelist, this person subbing for initiator, this person for sentinel. Becomes a little bit more apparent when we look at like the management slide. So this is the same thing. We've just clicked on manage, and now we're managing this screen. And you can see that, I've pulled the controller into the top frag role. You could do this with any player, but you have the same number of players. We're just capitalizing on this MVP or this top frag as a way to kind of fake a 5-man roster. And then you click save and you see the layout changes slightly. So it just feels kind of immersive. And I created a new icon for top frag here, so this doesn't exist now in the game. These other 4 do, but this I created, which is pretty cool. And just a couple different layouts of that. So here we have it where these 3 on the bottom are all the way across. Here's where these 3 are locked in the role, and then the MVP is at the end. And just, this is what it looks like when it tells you how many points you've won for the week. And this is where the bench is, extended on the bottom, and you have a 3rd card style. So I think we're going to end it there for today. So that's a look at the wireframes, the paper wireframes. We did some more opportunities work. Super excited for the next stage when we're going, or the next video when we're going to start to look at visualizing this. It's not frankly ready for it. Like, we could spend another day or so just ironing out a lot of details here, maybe more than that, maybe 2 or 3 days. But I find it so helpful to just hop in and get things visual. It helps people be excited about things. So we're going to start to do this on this in this next video. So hope you get to join that. And that's it for this one.